Listen, I was watching a couple of videos of you on YouTube, and there's one specific that you are describing yourself, and you say, "Well, I'm a Gemini, the dancer, a stylist, a designer." But there's one thing you said about you that kind of stuck to me. You said, "I'm a godfather,"
Yes.
and then I'm like, "All right, who is this little person? I want to get to know this little person a little bit more."
Yeah, it's so funny. I mean, it's really funny that you bring that up because I am in Los Angeles right now, and when I'm here working, and I'm out here for freeze as well, and I always stay with David Alhadef and his husband Jason Dzansky, and they have this little boy. They adopted a little boy about a year and a half ago. His name is Leo, and I was here when they brought him home, and so yeah, they asked me to be the godfather. And David's also the founder of The Future Perfect, which I have a furniture collection with, and I've been collaborating with for years now. And yeah, so that's my little godson, and it's like such a gift because I'm also an uncle, and it's just I don't know, it's kids bring out the best in me, and I think there's so much joy and creativity and light within them that I love to be around. So
Were you surprised when they asked you to be a godfather?
completely shocked. Yeah, but also so excited to. I've never been a godfather before, so he's my first and only, and yeah, it's such a special role. I mean, he's only a year and a half, but looking forward to like what that brings over the next lifetime, I guess.
Yeah, you said that you also an uncle, right?
Yeah, I have a niece and nephew. I have an identical twin, which is kind of one of my favorite like I don't know when people ask you what is something no one knows about you, and a lot of people don't know that I have a twin, and he looks exactly like me. He lives in Ohio. His name is Caleb, and he has a little boy and girl with his wife Michelle, and Josephine is 3, and Harrison is very similar to Leo's age. He's a year and a half.
Has anything changed about you when you get to know those little, no, those little people now? That's going to be a big part of your life.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think it just taught me like the depth of unconditional love, and being able to like look at something and without judgment or I don't know, any sort of nothing but love, and I hadn't really felt that before as an adult man. There's so many things that, we pick up along the way, and then being able to like look at a child that's in relationship towards you, whether it's one that it's you're given like this godfather title, or one that's like kind of you inherit through family. I don't know, it's just like for me it was just a feeling that it ignited within me that I didn't really know that I had until I'm looking at these little people.
See, the beauty of that is that I have the chance to talk to a lot of people, and we talk about the creative process, which we will kind of dive into that in a little bit. But once I say sparkle of opportunity to talk about something personal, something more emotional like this, for
Yeah.
me, it's a joy. Be able
Yeah,
to
of
kind of,
course.
dig in a little bit more and have a sense of not only the professional, but of the human being, right? And the extent of the people surrounding them.
Definitely. And I think, I mean, for me, it's just these are just very much layers to who I am, and bring so much more depth to my own work, both as a creative and yeah, as a human being on this planet.
You come across someone to be very calm. Your aesthetic, as you mentioned before, I think you describe as warm minimalism a couple times. But when I hear you talking, or a couple things that I listened, I was reading about your interviews, doing some research for this conversation. You came across someone very peaceful. Is that how you describe yourself, at least for most of the time?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that the spaces that I create, the the spaces I like to be in, and also just like the tone of my voice and how I like to kind of move through the world, is very calming and grounding. I have to be honest, I don't always feel that inside, but it's something that, yeah, exudes within me. Even if I have a lot of disruption or restlessness within me, I can definitely still come across it's like that metaphor of a swan or like a duck in the water where they're just gliding across the water, but underneath they're like, their feet are moving. I definitely, my mind is super active. But in order to kind of navigate just the demand of my job, and because photo shoots are demanding, and there's a high risk involved just with the resources being dumped in, and the limited amount of time. So I think being able to navigate that with some sort of grace and calmness is also very appealing to the client, because it's very easy to get stuck into the weeds of panic and nerves of having to get the shot or having to deliver.
Is that a personality trait that you always had as a kid as well, or something that kind of throughout the years and experiences you developed?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a kid, kind of navigating just my own inner emotions, and then having to, like, I don't know, I never really revealed that. I grew up in the Midwest, and I was very, like, nurtured and loved, and I came from a really incredible family, and had my twin and great parents. But there was a lot of inner dialogue that, I was kind of dealing with on my own. And I didn't really let people know, like, that was going on. So I do think it's, as a gay kid trying to figure out, like, where I belonged in the world, and like mimicking other people that were normal and all these things. I think, you tend to pick up ways to, I don't want to say hide, but also to protect yourself. And yeah, that's translated into all areas of my life where I can deal with those contrasting emotions of feeling one way inside, but having to still show up and be another way, to work and perform.
And at what point did you realize that, I don't want to say you come to yourself, but you feel confident enough to express some of those inner conflicts with the world, or with the close friends, or with family members, or with anything else?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was always super open, especially, like, having a twin. There was a lot of nonverbal communication, which I still struggle with today, because I like to communicate visually, but also, with friends and partners and colleagues. Like, a lot of times, communicating and articulating how I feel is not always the easiest, because I had this, like, mirror that just kind of knew how I was feeling without me having to communicate it. So the confidence is still coming, and I think I only learn by experience. So that is why I do so much. And I'm always so, people are like, how are you everywhere doing everything? And I'm like, I just want to learn. I'm like a curious, I just want to learn. So I'm always learning by experience. So as much experience as I can have, is the better,
That sense of curiosity it's clearly something that you had it with you. I'm sure your brother has something similar. Do you think you picked up more from your dad, your mom, anybody else in the family that's more adventurous, like to take chances and explore things?
Yeah, it's funny because, both of my parents are quite reserved and very, like, humble, like, and I say it in the most, like, regarded ways, very simple people, which is, like, a really beautiful thing. We grew up on a farm outside of Columbus, and they really, it was just the small things in life, really the joy in the everyday, and so for me, I kind of went the opposite, and I was super curious and wanted to go to the opposite end of the spectrum, and wanted to get my hands into everything, because mom and dad were just, like, very content with what they had. And I was like, oh, I want to know what's out in the big world. So I, like, used that as a catapult to go and find, go and seek and go and find, and, like, explore that curiosity. But, I did have a really strong matriarch of our family, my grandmother, who brought my brother and I to New York for the first time when we graduated 8th grade. And she was a world traveler, and she was a maker. She was always making things. And my mom too, she quilts. She makes the most beautiful quilts, and has always been creating. And she would make all of the textiles in our house by hand, and all the drapes, and all of our, anything from the shower curtain to the bedspread my mom made. So everyone was always using their hands and creating.
What was your first impression of New York? I mean, you come in with your grandmother and your brother for the first time in the big city, and what came to mind? What was the big impression?
I immediately fell in love with the city. It was really love at first sight. It felt like there's no place in the world that will like, if you have talent and you're hardworking, like that city will like accept you and absorb you and like lift you up. And it doesn't matter where you're from. There's no like, it just is this melting pot of diversity and people from all over the world. I still love living there for that reason. I get to walk onto the street and I get humbled every day by just the demands and the rigor of the city, but also you immediately feel a part of. You're on this island basically with 8 million people and we're all doing the same thing. And it just right sizes me. I'm one of like, you just feel like a worker amongst workers, but then you also have the world at your fingertips. Like I really do feel like New York, anything is possible. Like you can, your life can change in a matter of a minute, a second. Both good or bad, but it's just like the city of possibility, I think. And I immediately took to that, and the energy was very attractive. And I was a dancer, so she took us to our first Broadway show. And yeah, I mean, I was just like stars in my eyes right away.
What was the show?
It was a Tim Rice and Elton John show called Aida. And we were staying at the DoubleTree in Times Square, and it was like right next door. I don't think they even had a plan to see a show, but then, this is very much how my grandparents were. They just walked up to the box office, give me your best seats. And we sat like 3 rows back from the front. And yeah, my brother and I mean, we could probably still sing the soundtrack by heart, because it was just something that really like, I don't know, it'll be a memory we always have. It was our first show. So we would like, I think we like completely destroyed that CD. We would just listen to it in the car, at home. But
were you already dancing at that age? Was something that you were already pursuing that?
I was, yeah. And funny enough, the one thing I did leave out was my grandmother was a tap dancer as well. She had a group of women. She would go around like church groups and nursing homes, and they would perform like from her like 60s through her 80s. She would tap dance. But yes, I was dancing at that time, and I knew that dance was the thing that was going to get me to New York, and I couldn't wait to get back. So, 4 years later, I went to university in the city, and I was there.
It seems like the entire family was very supportive and nurturing of culture around you, taking you to places, showing you, exposing you to different things. How important do you think it is for, upcoming, young artists that wants to be, from the Middle East and from different parts of the world that are not quite in New York, to have that kind of environment, a safe environment to try, to take chance, to be curious, so they can eventually be in an age to start pursuing their own goals and dreams?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I highlight the markers within my life that brought me to New York, but and I come from privilege that I know a lot of other creatives and seekers don't always have the resources for. But I think my parents really they didn't know what to do with me. They took these opportunities to like get me outside of what they could offer, because they had their limited experience was small. So they were just letting me try and find myself, which I really appreciate. But I think, if you don't have those resources, I mean, now we have the whole world in our hand with this phone. I think, as a kid looking back, all you want to do is grow up, right? You just want to get to be an adult. And I would encourage, I wish I even just enjoyed those moments a little bit more. Like I remember just always really wanting to get out of Ohio and get out of that house. But looking back, like I had amazing dance teachers and training. And I think finding how to make the most of the moment that you're in is super important. And whether that's like creating for yourself, I remember like arranging rocks on my windowsill, and without knowing that was going to be my job one day, always toiling and just looking around you and how you can kind of capitalize on what is immediately in front of you in that moment. Because we're very limited to what we can do when we're young, there's money and even the freedom of like, can get on a plane or anything like that. So I think just seeing what's in front of you and how you can create and and find yourself within your surroundings.
Can you tell me a little bit about this transition between being a dancer, pursuing dancing, and then you find yourself now as a very successful styling, have your own book, have great partnerships, and a lot of things going on in your life. How did that came to be? Was it very organic, kind of naturally, ups and downs, I'm sure, a situation? Or there were a plan overall. You said, no, I'm happy here, but this is where I want to head.
Yeah, I mean, there was no plan at all. I think for me, I've always been just a natural doer. So there was always, if I wasn't auditioning for dance, I was, waiting tables. And I think it's one of my favorite Picasso quotes. He says, "Inspiration will find you, but it has to find you working." Like I was never sitting waiting to be struck with inspiration. I just knew that if I kept moving, I would eventually land where I was supposed to go. And, it was a very windy road of almost circles in a way, where I would have to come back around and maybe that loop would get a little bit bigger and I would find where I was supposed to land. But, from dance, it turned into personal training, because it was still using my body. And a lot of dancers, that's naturally what they go into, because it's a very limited, finite, underpaid and underappreciated art form. So when you're trying to make a living from it, you have to do a lot of things to supplement that. And then, from training, it went into going off with a client into estate management, which was like, I was like managing these large homes basically. And that was starting to like ignite this design element where I was like, oh, wow, I really was in tune with how spaces made me feel, and with dance, it's the same thing. It's all about evoking a feeling, putting movement onto your body and telling a story without having to speak. And similarly with spaces, it's the same thing. So when you walk into a room, you want to feel a certain way. And there is that nonverbal component as well, where each person will have a different experience, but you hope that experience is one of like calmness and serenity and comfort. So that being an estate manager ignited the design element, and it was just a polite persistence in that world where I knew I didn't want to go back to school, but I wanted to find where I belonged within this community. And a lot of that was just this innate gift that I was given, that just can compose objects and then somehow translate that into an image that then people really can feel. And I think that's what that is like the best part of my job, is being able to go into a space, figure out how it wants to be captured, like the essence of a room or a vignette even, or an object, and then be able to kind of translate that into an image that then the world can experience. And, the majority, 95% of the people will never step foot in that room, but they can feel as if they were there, if it's a great image,
Was that a specific time that you remember that you realized you saw something that you done in a styling a space that you realized that I'm good at this? Like they make click to you that this is something that I'm excelling, I'm learning, I'm getting better at it quickly, and I enjoy it, and I can make a great living doing this.
I don't know if I ever had that like aha moment. I think a lot of I'm somewhat dramatic by nature. And so I want this like white light experience. I wanted to be like struck into like, this is the thing that I'm supposed to do, But a lot of that was actually just like borrowed confidence from people telling me that I was good at it. And then I was like, okay, well, I know she's not a liar, so I'm going to believe her, while I'm still working through my own insecurities and like, what is this art form? What is this like as a living? Because, when I first started styling, it was odd and end editorial jobs that didn't pay a lot, and they were really infrequent. They were really inconsistent. I was like, I don't know how people make a living doing this. And it was obviously a job that didn't exist in Ohio. It didn't really exist in my immediate knowledge of like a career, what like this as a career could be. An agent came to me after I had worked with a client of mine, Roman and Williams, for a while. The photographer I was working with, his agent had reached out to me and said, what would it look like if I represented you? And it was like, I don't know if I can do this full time. Because at the time I had 3 other jobs. I was training still.
Mm-hmm.
That was like the way I knew how to make money. I would get up at 6 in the morning, train two people, and then I would go to work. And I was working as a junior designer for a small design firm in New York. And then I would style whenever I got the call from Architectural Digest or T Magazine or whatever. And I didn't know how this could be a living, but I wanted to bet on myself. And that's the other thing that I think throughout my life I've always done was I'm just like, I know that I can show up and I know that I can deliver. So I'm just going to bet on myself because I can't expect anyone else to do that for me. And I still struggle sometimes with like that imposter syndrome or like, am I going to lose this skill that I have? Like, am I going to wake up one morning and it's just gone? Like, because it is so intangible and like, I can't hold the skill, you know, it's just something that if I can like drop into like the flow of this language almost that I've been studying, I guess, for my whole life, then yeah, I can't lose it. It's not something that like I can like snap and it'll be gone, you know? So still learning, still like a student of life, you know, I'm like 35 years old and sometimes I feel like I'm 15.
Oh, it's important to have that student mindset for sure. But the imposter syndrome is something that I talked to one of the very first episodes we did it last year was with Faye Good. And she talks about like extensively how she still, up to this point in her career, she sometimes feel like that things can go away at any minute. And I was talking about it doesn't get any better. You know, she's like, no, every collection is hard. Every single year, it's harder. It gets, there's more challenges because the business is growing, but you also want to challenge yourself. So you keep pushing the boundaries and that makes things harder, more interesting or dynamic. I mean, you call it, right? But I think there's a creative mentality in the design world. And I'm curious to hear your thought in an aspect of styling. There's so many what's called trends, right? Things are always moving and evolving, fluidity. There's so much influence from fashion, cinema, and other things. You try to pay attention to those things as well, or do you believe that you have your sensibility and style, and people when they come to you, they know what they're looking for?
Yeah. I try really hard not to pay attention to those things. I mean, I think, you know, the best creatives will tell you, like, I love to work in a wide range. Like, I love to have clients that are Danish and they want like one vase in the corner. And then I love to work with maximalists like Roman and Williams and some of these other brands that really love the layering, you know, and to be able to work on that spectrum is really important as a creative because it keeps me fresh. It keeps me evolving. You know, when I also think that, you know, if I notice like sometimes that, you know, people are, I don't want to say imitating me, but then, you know, branches, they really caught on, you know, like, and I didn't invent that, but now everyone's doing the branches and it drives me to evolve, you know, like I think once the trends kind of catch up to what you've created or what you're working through, it is important to like try new things and to be evolving and looking to like what's next and how can I challenge myself? Because I think as a creative and a stylist, when people hire me, yes, I would hope that they just hire me because they trust me, not because they want me to recreate something I've already done. Because in my mind, I've already done that, you know, so I don't want to just do the same thing over and over again. I don't want to do the same branch and the same arrangement. It's like, it's very important to like listen to the space and then kind of adapt to that. So yeah, to answer your question, I try not to follow trends. I think obviously like through research and when pulling references and swipe for different kind of jobs and things like that, it's hard not to like notice the trends, you know, like I definitely feel like I have a pulse on design community and also fashion and art. So that'll always be part of my subconscious and my knowledge, which I think is important, but definitely not the driving force behind what it is that I'm creating in any given day.
I also heard you saying something that a part of your job is to know when to stop moving things around. Now stop styling, just to kind of walk away from the situation. Tell me a little bit about, is it a feeling? Is it a sense of when do you know that the job is done?
Yeah, it's definitely a feeling. It's definitely and it's I think like if I'm again when I mentioned like dropping into flow and like trusting my own instincts and intuition, like that isn't an innate thing that I wake up with. That is something that like I have to like, do a morning routine or like get grounded and calm to find that, and so, especially I was on set 180 days last year. So that I can't be expected to be like on every single day. But the thing I love about my job is it is very collaborative. So I work with people that I really trust. So the photographers that I work with, the brands, the creatives, the art directors, the creative directors. If I don't want to say having an off day, but when we're gathering anywhere between 10 and 20 images a day, I can lean on these people to be like, okay, yeah, it's good. And I'm like, okay, you sure? And then move on. Mm-hmm. But I would say the majority of the time, yes, it's a feeling. It's almost like painting. I call when I borrow this term that Robin from Roman and Williams uses a lot. She says, "Let's sketch." And sketching is just getting stuff in front of the lens. Like, let's see how this is feeling. So that's really all styling is. It's very much like dance in that way, where you're given this language of ballet, but then you're putting it on your body. And then you're making a combination of steps. Same thing with a photo. Especially if you have the luxury of some time, you can start with almost a blank slate, start to build this scene and sketch and really paint this composition. And then, stepping back, looking at the monitor, knowing when it's good, and just be like, and sometimes it looks like building a really dense photo and then just peeling back the layers, and then getting to something very refined. And then it's fun to see that process happen as well, because each image is beautiful in its own way. But my favorite thing to do a lot is just to let's take one with and one without. Let's take one picture with that and then one without it. So then you have both. And then you can like step back and look at it in a week or a month and say like, oh yeah, it was better without. Because I have to say, I've never regretted not adding something. The only time I've ever like looked at a picture, I'm like, shoot, I should have edited that out. Like, and I've really tried to cater sometimes to clients, and I'll lose myself sometimes. And so it's important to like also just stay in that trust of your own sensibility and knowledge, because there are a lot of voices on set that can kind of throw you off if you give in.
You're allowed it. I think the interesting comparison you made about the designing, styling, and even dancing, those are things that perhaps you can teach someone, right? You can teach someone how to do color coordinating, how to do movements in the dancing aspect as well. But the feeling that we were talking about, the feeling that the moment that this is it, is that something that can be taught? Or is it just a matter of just being a trained, just getting the work done, and that's organically just comes from there?
It's so interesting, because it's such a hard thing to pinpoint, right? Like, what is that, I don't know, special it factor, whatever you want to say, because even in dance, you could learn the steps and everyone could be doing the same steps. Mm-hmm. But then you could look down the line and people add their own style, or they have their own, they exude this energy where you're like, oh my God, she has it, or like, that's the person who's going to get the role. There is like this almost like turned up volume on certain creatives that are able to create in a way that's this like quiet confidence, and that like they just have a style that's really hard to pick up, and I think, I didn't always have the style that I have now. I grew up in a farm in Ohio. Like I wasn't exposed to what I am now, but I have a like insatiable hunger for knowledge. So I think if you have that hunger, it is something that you can learn, because I'm self-taught. I absorb books and art, and I teach myself through visuals, because all of that goes into this like library that when I am working, I can consciously or subconsciously draw upon and like bring out and use, whether it's a color palette or the reach of a branch or the composition of a still life. Like all of those things are then become a part of me if I see it. So I don't know. I do think it can be learned. Although people even today, someone said like, you should start a school of styling. And I'm like, and I try, like I work with a lot of amazing freelancers and people that help me on set. It's like not something I do alone, but at the end of the day, like, yeah, the attention to detail and the ability to pick it up, but also to perform on set. Because a lot of times, a lot of creatives love to work on their own, but there's something that you have to, you know, channel, which is as a dancer is such a gift that I had, the performance element, because you are on set with like anywhere between 10 and 20 people, and you have to like perform in that moment. Like you can't like be like, okay, I'll be right back in an hour while I create this thing. So there's a lot of factors that go into being able to do this job. And I think some people are great like in their studio or at their home, and I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. But then you get them on set and they kind of crumble. I guess it would be almost like, you know, people who are really great at or like not great standardized test takers or something like that. Like we're all so different that way. But yeah, anyway, I didn't even answer your question, but I think,
It was
some elements can be
yeah.
learned, and some are something that are very innate. So
I no, I would have to agree with you. I think sometimes instead of learning things, we don't have to add more stuff. We have to take away maybe more silence, more moment of which oneself is where perhaps you tap in that little magic flow situation that you can, you know, lose control a little bit in a good way, right? Come up with some very interesting and different things. Are you someone that actually kind of rises to the occasion? Like on the set, it's time to go. You're on a set deadline, things are going crazy. You would, because being a performer, being a dancer for so many years and all of that, is someone that you kind of thrive on that situation. You rise above and meet expectations there.
yeah, definitely. I definitely thrive in pressure. And I also think pressure is a privilege. Like I think to have the demand on you and also the eyes on you is like, I take that as like a gift, you know, and I really, sometimes I find it hard to like cultivate and like conjure creativity unless there's a demand for it, like in that moment. Because sometimes if I have a downtime, which isn't that much, but if I do, it's like I can't be like struck inspiration. You know, sometimes it's almost like when it's there's this finite time frame, it brings out the best in me. It brings out the you know, like can't overthink it, just got to do it. You know, because I think a lot of creatives, in my experience and in my own experience, can overthink everything and can almost talk yourself out of doing something before you even get started because you're either worried about what other people will think or I'm notoriously hard on myself, you know? So if I have a lot of freedom, that's my godson. Could you hear that?
Yes, you're having a good time.
That's amazing. Yeah, he's having the best time. He's really into bubbles right now, so he's outside.
Oh, that we never phase out. We all love bubbles, doesn't matter how old you are.
I mean, seriously. So, yeah, I think definitely like I love like rising to the occasion, and that pressure and demand actually brings out so much more in me than I can bring out in myself alone.
You said earlier that you're very tough on yourself, and I clearly can see someone who's very critical of, you know, everything that you do. How do you sometimes give yourself a break? How do you find yourself perhaps treating yourself to something, a moment of, you know, just acknowledging that, looking around, being grateful for where you are, but also understanding that there is more. You still, and it's okay to want more and reaching for more things. How do you deal with that a little bit internally?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, internally, I think, you know, I've realized in this short time that I've, you know, been on this planet, like I don't necessarily know what I need. And I also don't even necessarily know what I want. And I think if I can just show up in the day, stay present, you know, my favorite kind of like intention, I don't know, people can call it like an affirmation or even just like an offering is like, surprise me. Like the universe surprised me today, because I feel like we're all limited and in our minds at least. And I think if I can have the willingness to be surprised in the day rather than know everything or over plan, over scheme of everything, like if I can just have the willingness to be surprised, I find that really takes the pressure off of me and allows me to be a little bit more gentle on myself, because really the being hard on myself are these like unrealistic expectations on myself, people around me, and then I get disappointed, I have a resentment, all of these things. So it's really staying present and the willingness to okay, I think this is what I want, but I don't really know. So surprise me, because half the time I do get what I want. And then I'm like, oh, wait, I don't know if that was actually what I, because I don't even know what to ask for half the time. And I love to be, I love to be surprised. And I think as a stylist, it's easy to almost torture spaces or images. And, it's really important to notice when things aren't as you planned, and being like humble enough, like ego aside, to be like, oh, actually, that looks great. Like there was this one time where all these movers, all these ceramics from one table, and they put it on another table, and I didn't do anything other than say, that looks great. We can say styled by, Crown Moving Company, but it looks great and we should walk away because it looks incredible. And they did it all on accident. But I was surprised in that moment. Like, you kind of just have to give yourself over to noticing those things, because it is easy to the ego involved, and then everything feels like life or death when if you just show up and notice the things that maybe weren't intended and they're a little imperfect. That's when I can be a little gentler on myself and also the people around me. I mean, everybody knows that it's like I'm demanding. I can be demanding.
So we're early in 2024. And talking about surprises and expectations, do you have, I don't want to say a plan or a resolution or anything like this, but there are things that you want to accomplish this year that you haven't had a chance to pursue, that you're looking forward to it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've 2024 has already been the year of surprises for sure. Last year, coming off that the book and all the incredible collaborations and partnerships that I had, I don't want to say I lost myself, but it was just a very work-focused year. And this year, I've really slowed down already, and kind of started to nurture my personal life a little bit more. And being with the people that I love and that inspire me, because I learned so much from the community that I've built around me. I think my two biggest values in life really are community and resourcefulness. I've always been super resourceful and haven't waited for anyone to give me the blueprints or the playbook in life. It's like, let's just find a way to get it done. And then I've built this incredible community around me. And, unfortunately, my work brought me away from that community last year. So getting back into that community, showing up for people that I wasn't able to show up for last year, and almost nurturing and repairing some of the personal relationships, even with myself, that I had to neglect a little bit last year. I'm going back to Salone this year to present, which I'm really excited about. And I think just slowing down a little bit. I mean, people look at me and they're like, this is slowing down for you. And I'm like, it is. It's slowing down for me. Maybe being on set 120 days instead of 180 days like last year. And, I'm also looking to buy my first home. And there's there's these very personal things in life, because, you invest in yourself and your career. And then I do think it's important to find that balance, and to, it'll never be perfect, but also to do some things for myself as well.
You were talking about community, and that is a question that my next question for you is that often enough, we think of design community, a very collaborative community. People really collaborate with projects and several different things. But also at the top, there's only an X amount of spots and availabilities and things like that. Do you find sometimes this can become a very competitive community, or does it really involve, the competitiveness is not really part of the DNA in this community?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because being in the community, it's hard to have a macro view of the community. But I have to say, a lot of collaborators recently have come from the art world, the fashion world, and they always talk about how the design community is so much different, how it's smaller, and it's there is more camaraderie and willingness to support each other. I think as designers, it takes a village to be able to even make something, let alone build or design a complete home. It's there's so many hands that have to pass through it, that there is a we have to rely on each other. So I don't know if there's a lot of room for competitiveness and yeah, I don't feel that, at least. I think there's room for everyone. I think it's still a very small community, and there's a space for everyone here. And I think we all, like, the people that are at the top are the most collaborative, kind, generous people that I know, the people that are really working. And I find, and like in every industry, the people that are really competitive or are the people that maybe don't really have much going on. You know what I mean? Like, they're not standing in like their talent, and the people that are really talented I'm always shocked by their generosity and kindness. Yeah. And I try to surround myself with people like that.
Sometimes it comes from a place of insecurity, right?
Yeah.
Their competitiveness. Now, there's a couple of rapid questions, and I ask almost everybody who comes to the show, and I want to go ahead and do it with you. And okay. First one, best compliment you ever got?
Best compliment I ever got was, I feel so comfortable around you. I think I love when people, strangers really, like, feel comfortable around me. I think it's one of my biggest skill sets, is to just disarm people and make them feel, and I guess that's like people seeing themselves in me. And I always try and be an open book, because I've learned so much from other people being open books that I want to pass that on and just really be honest and open with every aspect of me. So that's always the best compliment, is like, I feel comfortable around you.
If you had the opportunity to switch life for a day, who would it be?
Switch lives for a day. That's so fascinating. I would really like to be in some sort of very physical craft. Like, for me, like a stonemason comes to mind, but something like super physical that I was able to like use my hands and be in and create, that was very like gritty.
What do you do for fun?
For fun. I mean, my favorite thing to do in the world is laugh. I don't ever actually really share my sense of humor that much, because I don't have the opportunity, and I'm always worried about how that's going to translate. But yeah, I'm very I'm very dry, and my favorite thing to do is laugh. And for fun, I spend time with my friends, my family, and I love going to the movies. I know that all of it seems so work related, but I mean, seeing art, going to see dance, taking dance class, all of these things like feed my soul. But I love just like moving, working out, all those things like bring me joy.
Tell me about a guilty pleasure.
Sugar. I mean, I am like I have like a sweet tooth, like to the nth degree. Everyone always loves going to dinner with me, because there will always be dessert. I am shocked when people are like, "Oh, do you know dessert, right?" And I'm like, "Yes, dessert." So yeah, I love sugar. And then on set, it's freaking crazy. Like craft services, and then I'll eat all of one thing, like make myself sick over it, and then they replenish it. They're like, "Oh, you really like those?" I'm like, "No, I ate them all, so they were gone, and now there's more. Like, what am I supposed to do now?" But yeah,
no, I can relate to that. I can eat like a 5-year-old. Candy, the sugar stuff. It's a problem, but it's okay. It's all right. We'll be all right.
Yeah, we will be.
Favorite book or a recommendation of a book?
Yeah. So when I was writing my own book with Sam Cochran, who's incredible, a lot of people started sending me books on writing, which were helpful, because I wasn't like, it wasn't a practice that I had. And I think any writer will tell you the hardest thing about writing is just sitting down to write. So there's a book called Bird by Bird by Annie Lamott, and her writing is incredible. She has a tone that I wish that I was able to like articulate through writing. But it's called Bird by Bird, and it's just her lessons on writing, and it helped me tremendously with writing my own book. And just I don't know, I love her point of view. She has great metaphors in there. But I couldn't recommend that book enough. I sent it to like 20 people.
Now, I wanted to recommend something to watch. It can be a TV show, a movie, perhaps a play, or something like that.
Yeah. Let's see. TV show, movie, or play? This is a great question. It's funny because I always watch things for different reasons. Like I've been watching The Feud, the Truman Capote, The Swans, that, and mostly for the sets, which are incredible. I think, let me see, if I had to recommend one show or movie or TV show, can I just say this might even fall in my guilty pleasure? I watch RuPaul's Drag Race
There you
all the
go.
time, and I think every creative should watch it because the things that these people have to do are insane. Like it's like acting, singing, hair, makeup, dress. Like I mean, it's like such a great art form. But that is like something that brings me great joy. Is to like, I don't know. I love like the LGBTQ community and just like everything that show does for our community, and like the creativeness that it lifts is incredible.
And the last one, we need you to recommend us our next guest. Who would you like us to invite to be part of the show next?
You know who I am fascinated by, that I love everything that he does, is Rick Owens.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
We actually just recorded with Michelle.
Oh yeah.
We were in Paris. We're getting ready to release that, and we
Great.
filmed at their house, and
Yeah.
it was phenomenal. Michelle, I mean, she is just a treasure. She's just a treasure. So, but Rick, of
Yeah.
course, he would be a phenomenal.
Yeah.
All right, we can work on that one.
But have you done Vincenzo de Cotis either?
No, we talk. I think there is something about that. The conversation aspect of the English, I guess, can be a little bit of on. I know he does tons of interviews before, but with the camera on and the audio, I think there's a little conflict there. But we are always open to it. Yeah, he would be great as well.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just trying to think of like an incredible artist that I've seen while even out here in LA. I just saw his show at Carpenter's, which was so incredible.
Yes,
But yeah, I just love I love the like. I feel like there are some parallels with both of them as well, Rick and so just like the use of material and the forms, and
and carpenters represent both. So there we are.
Yeah,
there it is.
exactly. There it is.
Colin, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. I think it's been such an insightful and interesting just to get to know you a little bit better. And I won't take you much of your time because I know as a little boy over there, Leo want to hang out with his godfather. So I want to thank you again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I love what you're doing. And yeah, I'll be following along. I've been a fan of the show for a long time.
I appreciate it, Colin. Have a wonderful day. Take it easy.